Recently on the channel, I made a scabbard that went with my Scorpion armor. However, it had no sword to go in it. So today on the channel, I am going to make the Katana to go with it. If you'd like to make one of your own, there's a link below to free patterns. And without me rambling anymore, let's just go ahead and get right into the video. Alright, first thing, I have to trace and cut out 3 of the main Katana pattern. 2 of them are out of 3mm thick EVA foam, and the other is 6mm thick. I'm using 6 because it is the closest to the 1/4 inch thick piece of clear acrylic that I cut by just basically using the edge of the pattern and then drawing around it. And then I cut this out. This is going to go in the center of the 6mm one. I use my Dremel rotary tool to cut out the acrylic. Now, if you'd like to see how I did that, you can always check out my Dark Saber video where I do a whole lot of acrylic cutting. But just to speed up this video, I didn't. So I trace around the shape and then I cut it out. And then I go ahead and brush contact cement on the inside of the foam that I cut out and on the outside edge of my acrylic. Now I sanded and roughed up the acrylic as much as possible. It was originally clear as glass, but I want the glues to bond with it, and the best way to do that is to rough up the surface as much as possible. After my acrylic is in the center, I put contact cement on both sides of the 3 and the 6, and then stick the sides together, and I repeat this on both sides. Now that the 2 3s and the 6 are together, I'm going to use my Dremel rotary tool to just help even everything out since I'm not perfect. So you'll notice if you've downloaded the patterns for this, it's split up into sections. Section A also acts as the handle pattern, so you'll need 2 of those out of 6mm foam. I'm going to glue both of them lining up with the bottom. Once I get my 2 handle pieces on, I use my Dremel rotary tool to smooth and round out the grip, as well as put some final shape into the blade itself. Alright, lastly I did round off the back side here. Before I do anything else on the blade, I'll work on the grip a little bit. I did round it out pretty good, but this is just a base. That's why I didn't care how many seams and lines are in it, because I'm going to wrap this with a layer of 2mm EVA foam. There's not a pattern for the 2mm that I use to wrap the grip. I just cut it to length and then wrapped it around it and trimmed off the excess till I got the right size, and then I contact cemented it on. Next, I'll be using my Dremel to put that wavy line down the edge of the blade that is referred to as a Hammond line, which comes from the tempering process on a katana to give it its brittle but very sharp edge. Next, I'm going to cut out two patterns for the handguard, both out of 6mm. I'm going to layer one on top of the other. It'll be a little thicker than what it would realistically be, but I want it to be durable enough. Once the two halves are together, I just super glue them into place using some gel super glue. I put a little bit around the area where I want it to seal and bond to, and I just slide the guard down the blade and evenly line it up, put it into position before the super glue has time to fully cure. I cut a 1-inch wide strip of 3mm EVA foam, and I drew a line at 1/3 of an inch. And I'm going to put some cuts into it with my xacto knife. I used some air dry foam clay to make some little scorpion shaped minutiae, little ornaments to go on the grip. Before I glue them on, I'm going to use a little punch I made here from a nail that I glued onto a paintbrush handle to put some texture on the grip. I'm just going to focus on this area here on both sides, since you won't really see any of this on the front of the back. After the handle is fully textured, I just use some super glue gel to glue on my two scorpion ornaments. So I'm not actually going to cord wrap the handle. What I am going to do is use 2mm foam that I textured. And I put the texture in by heating up a file with my heat gun and then just rolling it across here. I'm going to cut this into strips, then I'm going to start wrapping around this. I put a 2mm strip with an 1/8 inch wide strip of 2mm over that to kind of create like this brass cap. And then I started using my textured foam. The first one I just put straight, but the second one I'm going to take I stopped this about 3/4 of an inch for the end, and I cut an inch wide strip of 3mm foam. Okay, I have a scrap of 6. I make a light impression in the foam, and before it fades, I trace that out. Next, I use a ballpoint pen to just kind of draw as closely as I can the design that I saw into the underside of the guard. You could use an X-Acto knife, but I didn't want a bunch of direct cuts, I just wanted an impression. For drawing an outline on the top of the guard, I go ahead and use some Mod Podge Dimensional Magic to put some raised areas and a couple dots on it. This is pretty much dry. It usually takes a couple of hours. You'll know because it'll turn clear from that milky white color. And I realized I forgot a couple of details, which is to take a piece of strap, well, the 2mm foam, I'm using a strap, and cut it and glue it so it looks like it's threading into the ends here. Alright, I've applied probably 3 to 4 layers to this back part of the blade. I only put one right here on the edge and was kind of careful to actually not getting it into the area where I sanded this pattern in. And then 3 layers on this too, and 2 on the cap, but none on this grip here. Leaving that. I've primered this with a pearlized black over all my Mod Podge. And now I'm going to do an overspray on the blade area with some pearlized silver from Createx airbrush. I start with some acrylic craft paint. It's titanium gold, and I just use that to do some accents. Next, I'm going to move on to Model Masters Gold. This stuff is great, and I use it for the guard and the scorpion accents and a few other things. Next, I use pewter rub and buff to put along the edge where it would be sharp so that point stands out. Well, if you've seen the last video, you know that I made a scabbard, but I had no katana for it. And I just realized I haven't actually seen if this will fit into this, which is pretty important. So if it doesn't, I'm going to feel pretty dumb right here, right now, on camera. Oh, wow. That is not perfect, but it is Definitely good. That's awesome. Okay. Next name to go up on the board is Patrick Shelnut. Now, if you have a name with like an at in front of it, I'm going to put it in all caps. And if you have a proper name, like, he would like displayed, I'm going to spell it the same way as your name would be spelled. He's done a lot of excellent projects, including a Predator that came out looking super awesome. Every time he has guests over, that is the one thing that they always want to see is his Predator every time. Never fails. He did an excellent job. It looks great. He's been super supportive. Well, I really wanted to do a mobility test like that more so in the last video as opposed to this one, but I thought I would look more funny than I already do, flailing around with no foam katana in my hand. Of course, I don't have the pauldrons or any of that stuff. I imagine mobility will be quite a bit less with those. But we'll see. I don't know. I have some ideas. I'm hoping I can make it as mobile as possible. Just so many of the elements of the costume itself already being naturally mobile. I'm pretty excited to wear this to a convention. It'll just be infinitely more comfortable and nowhere near as hot as some of the other ones like the Predator or Carnage, where I'm just covered in either all foam or latex or both. One thing of note that I did change for anybody out there that's like super detail oriented is that the end cap looks much more like this and is shaped much more like this versus what I did. Part of the reason I made mine so pronounced is inevitably I end up dropping things, and I was worried that, or just thought if I dropped this, the heaviest end is that point on the handle. Most likely it'll fall in that direction. So with it being as big and bulky as it is, if you've ever dropped EVA foam props, you'll notice that whenever it does, you'll get sometimes cracks in the finish in the paint or wrinkles. Sometimes you can get the wrinkles out with a heat gun, sometimes you can't. But with this, at least I have the option that if I do get cracks or wrinkles, I can literally just sand down that area. I have tons of material with that thick of a cap, and then I can just seal and repaint it. There's a link to patterns below if you'd like to try your hand at making one. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe, as it does greatly help out the channel. As always, thank you for watching, and have a great day. Okay, you're going to need 4 of the main pieces for the stand, and then I also cut a 1.5 by 8 wide strip of 6mm, which is the same as these, and another 8 by 5 hunk of 6mm. This is going to be the back. This is going to go along the bottom.